Also, when we start looking on those center pivots, you got things like the initial cost of the sprinklers themselves. If we go to overhead impacts, that's going to probably be the cheapest sprinkler system we have. But it's going to probably be the most inefficient. We're going to get less water on the ground with that system than any other system we put on it. So then we have to think, well, how about putting drops on it? Get those sprinklers down under the truss and closer to the canopy. Okay, that's very efficient. We increase our efficiency, maybe 10% water efficiency, but we've increased our initial cost. Is it worth it? It's a trade-off. You have to make a decision. Is the trade-off a good one or a bad one? Now we've increased the cost of the actual system because those drops every 10 feet or 7 feet or whatever the spacing is are going to be with some kind of a sprinkler on them are going to be considerably more expensive than just an impact sprinkler up on top of the pipe. And then if we go to more intensive spacing like LIPA, now we might have a drop every 3 feet instead of every 10 feet. And now we've tripled the amount of drops we have. So that's tripled the cost of the basic sprinkler system. But is it worth it? It might be. It might be a trade-off just with the pump size. It might end up being the same expense because you might have gone from, say, a 100 horsepower pump down to a 25 horsepower pump. And just the difference in the price of the power unit might make the difference in the amount of dollars you can put into the sprinklers that you've actually put on the piping out the length of the system. It's another thing in orchards when we get into solid set. How dense do we put the sprinklers? The lower pressure we go, the less distance they throw. So we have to have more of them, but they become cheaper. And then the piping we apply, when we get into lower pressures and lower flow rates, now we can go to much less expensive tubing even to apply the sprinklers. And we might even leave it above ground and not even bury it. So the installation might be way cheaper. So we can go from buried PVC to on-surface poly with just little spinner operation punch-in risers. I mean, we can get down to where we have really inexpensive individual sprinkler units, but we need a whole bunch more of them. So which is more effective? You know, do we need to, if we go on a 40 by 40 grid with something rigid underground buried, or do we go 20 by 20, which it increased your number of sprinklers times 8 effectively, but now it's all totally portable, basically punched together on the surface operation. There might be a price offset that makes them balance out. So when we look at initial costs, that's the kind of trade-offs that you're always having to make. Then you look at operations. Is it okay to have that tubing on the surface, or is that going to become a nuisance for the operations of the orchard? You know, or are you going to end up tearing that tubing up with the equipment? Well, in a lot of cases, no. In some cases, yes. Might depend on how the orchard's set up. If it's already trellised and wired and the whole bit, people aren't going to be walking between the trees anyhow. They got to walk right through a bunch of wires. They're not going to be going there. But if the trees are spaced wide apart and people can move through the orchard at will in any direction, then it might become a liability. And so you got trade-offs there. So you're always looking at what's going to work, what's not going to work.